It is 7 o'clock. This is a Sky News special programme on the Ukraine. Well, here in Lviv, missiles have struck and destroyed a building near the airport, which the government says were launched from the Black Sea. In Moscow, President Putin hails a special operation in Ukraine while celebrating the anniversary of Crimea's annexation.
The way our guys are acting during this military operation, shoulder to shoulder, they help each other, they support each other, and when it's necessary, they cover each other like a brother with their bodies on the battlefield.
A city reduced to rubble. President Zelensky says Russian forces continue to block humanitarian corridors to Mariupol. 3 weeks on, we'll have a report from the city of Kharkiv, one of the first places to come under bombardment from the Russian attacks. More than 3 million refugees have now left the country as Boris Johnson praises the people in the UK taking in families in need.
147,000 people and families across the UK opened their homes to the evacuees.
And I'll be speaking live to a family due to arrive in the UK soon, along with the host family taking them in. Well, good evening from Lviv in the west of Ukraine. This city was plunged into the war today. Ukraine's military said cruise missiles were used in an attack on an aircraft repair plant. But as the fighting continued here in Moscow, Vladimir Putin attended a huge rally with his supporters on the anniversary of the annexation of Crimea and praised the heroic effort in Ukraine. Well, coming up on this special programme, we'll bring you the stories of devastation in the capital, Kyiv, as Russian forces continue to launch their attacks, as well as these stories of people trying to escape to neighbouring countries and to the UK. But first, Ukraine's military said missiles were today fired from the direction of the Black Sea towards the western city of Lviv, hitting the state aircraft repair plant only a short distance from the international airport here. Well, Sky's Alistair Bunkle reports now from Lviv.
The airstrikes woke Lviv just before 6:30 in the morning. 4 cruise missiles, fired from the Black Sea, hit an aircraft repair facility on the edge of the city. Again, Russian forces have shown they can and will strike deep into Ukraine. Nowhere now is safe or off limits.
We can smell the smoke in the air, but this is as close as we can get. We're probably 400 or 500 metres away. Police and security are really on edge this morning. They are stopping every single car that is heading towards the airport complex. There is a feeling that this is the second time the Russians have been successful in airstrikes around Lviv, and there is a worry that there could be Russian saboteurs, Russian agents operating inside Lviv and helping out Moscow.
People here had been expecting the Russians to attack the airport, so many weren't all that surprised when it actually happened. We have a bomb shelter next door, an old Soviet one, this lady tells me. So we will work, and keep working. Everything will be fine. We are preparing for victory. That's the sort of defiance that President Putin is struggling against. In Moscow today, he emerged from the security of the Kremlin to address a vast crowd, marking the 2014 annexation of the Crimea. It is the first time he's been seen in public since the invasion began.
Our guys are fighting, are acting during this military operation, shoulder to shoulder. They help each other, they support each other, and when it's necessary, they cover each other like a brother with their own bodies on the battlefield.
These images of Russian nationalism and seeming devotion to their president are for a domestic audience, but also designed to show the world he is not a leader on the run. Putin has staked everything on this war. Defeat is unthinkable for him. With chilling determination, he finished his speech by quoting the patron saint of Russia's nuclear fleet.
In all his wonderful career, he didn't lose one battle. He said once, So these storms will glorify Russia. It happened then. And today, it's also so. And this will be so forever. Thank you.
The mood here in Ukraine couldn't be more contrasting. Ivan Skripnik was killed when his base was hit by Russian airstrikes over the weekend. His comrades mourn with the grim realization that it could be them next. They are running out of space in the city's military cemetery. The earth mounds of fresh graves are marked by temporary crosses and the portraits of the men who now lie beneath the soil that they died defending. The pain of a mother's loss echoes across this country. The feeling of pride for a fallen soldier competes with stunned bewilderment and anger, so much anger that it has somehow come to this. Alistair Bunker, Sky News in Lviv.
Well, as Russia praised the operation here in Ukraine and the heroic effort of his troops, Sky News has witnessed civilians being hit from the ground and the air near to Kiev. 6 buildings, including a preschool, were damaged in the attack in the city's Podil neighbourhood yesterday, just north of the city centre and about 1.5 miles from the government quarter holding the presidential palace. Our special correspondent Alex Crawford sent this report.
This is what the Russian authorities insist is not happening. The Russian leader is adamant his military is not hitting homes in the Ukrainian capital or elsewhere because attacking civilians is an international war crime, and President Putin insists he's doing everything he can to preserve the lives of civilians. That's in direct contradiction to the evidence we and many others are finding on the ground. In the centre is a playground. Around it are residential blocks, people's homes, schools. They've been pretty much reduced to rubble. And these are some of those who used to live in them. They've lost everything. It's not human to do this, she says. To attack the children.
I didn't remember words in English.
They grab whatever they can in plastic bags. Pets, TVs. This is all they have now. Right next door, there are 2 schools. One is a kindergarten. Schools have been suspended for the time being in the capital, or these classrooms would have been full of pupils. These attacks are killing, and they're not soldiers or fighters. This was an elderly man, one of many who felt too frail to leave the city despite the dangers. The daily attacks have left others badly hurt. He survived with terrible head wounds. His wife did not. The victims here don't have much faith in any peace talks succeeding, and no one we spoke to had any doubt about who the attacks are aimed at. And you think it was specifically targeted at civilians like you? Why, though? Yes, I definitely think this, she says. Putin's trying to kill as many Ukrainians as he can. And the Kiev mayor is absolutely certain these repeated attacks on civilians are ruthlessly executed. Do you think there's any mistake? This could have been a mistake, or was this deliberately targeting civilians?
Okay, if we're talking about mistake, here's mistake. Last morning was a mistake, 24 hours ago. 2 days ago was mistake, huge mistake, destroyed the Kharkiv and Mariupol. How many mistakes they do it? How many civilians have to killed? And after that to explain about mistake from Russian forces.
The UN's warned the country's food supply system is falling apart. They were scrambling to save stocks here. A number of these shops have been hit as well and impacted, and that is the worry that a lot of these food supply chains, bakeries, food factories have all been impacted as well and are being specifically targeted. So they're wasting no time, pooling supplies in Kyiv. These are all donations. They're trying to make sure those left homeless and hungry by the bombings are somehow looked after. And this despite worries that food warehouses in the country are running low. Those who have are giving to those who don't.
I think that we are the second front on this country, because the army is the first front, volunteers, and it was second front.
This is true community. Whilst the capital may so far have been spared a major assault, among the workers here there are those who've also lost their homes to the daily bombings. Like Tatiana, back 2 days later, helping those she feels are less fortunate.
No, it's strange. It's like something unbelievable. It's like from the movie. Something from the movie came in my real life.
She showed us her flat, now in bits. She's moved in with friends.
For me, I don't think that I can die or something like this. I'm afraid. I think what I can do for other people. And no, something like this. Right? How I can help? No, because I'm lucky, and in my building, about 400 apartments, and everybody alive. And other people not so lucky.
The suffering is unrelenting, and whilst Kyiv defences are so far holding, the capital's residents are still bracing themselves for more of this and worse. Alex Crawford, Sky News, Kyiv.
Well, in New York, the United Nations Security Council has been meeting at the request of Russia to discuss its allegations that biological weapons were being made in Ukraine. The Russian representative, Vasily Nebenzia, suggested scientists in Ukraine have been carrying out experiments.
As part of the Flu Fly Away project, the Kharkov Institute of Veterinary Medicine studied wild birds as a vector to transmit avian flu. At the same time, they assessed the ways in which the transmission process could become uncontrollable, cause economic damage, and create a risk to food security. Documents show the involvement of the Kharkov Institute in the work to collect strains of avian flu viruses which have high epidemiological potential and could cross the species barrier. The Russian Ministry of Defense also has more and more new documents about the transfer of samples of blood serum of Ukrainian citizens to the territory of third countries, including to the UK, Georgia, and Germany.
But the US Ambassador Linda Thomas-Greenfield dismissed his allegations and also described Russia's calling of today's meeting as a potential false flag effort in action.
Last week, we heard from the Russian representative a tirade of bizarre conspiracy theories. This week, we're hearing a whole lot more where that came from, things that sound like they were forwarded to him on a chain email from some dark corner of the internet. President Biden has a word for this kind of talk: malarkey. As I said 1 week ago, Ukraine does not have a biological weapons program. There are no Ukrainian biological weapons laboratories, not near Russia's border, not anywhere. There are only public health facilities, proudly, and I say proudly, supported and recognized by the U.S. government, the World Health Organization, and other governments and international institutions.
Well, the US President Joe Biden and China's Xi Jinping held a 2-hour phone call today as the White House looked to deter Beijing from providing economic or military assistance to Russia. Well, Martha Kellner joins us now live from Washington, D.C. And Martha, we're told Joe Biden was candid and direct, so do we know what was said?
Yeah, that phone call ended around 11 a.m. local time here. It took around 4 hours for us to hear what the White House perspective was on how that conversation went, what progress, if any, was made. I think from the vagueness of the readout, and that is their interpretation of how this call went, I think it's fair to say that there were no breakthroughs from this phone call, but rather this was the beginning of a longer conversation and a number of phone calls that the White House hopes will happen between President Biden and President Xi of China. They last spoke in November, so it's been a fair while, and certainly, much has changed in that time. I'll just read you a little bit of what the White House have said. The headline was that President Biden described to President Xi the implications and consequences if China provides material support to Russia as it conducts brutal attacks against Ukrainian cities and civilians. This is the major fear. US intelligence suggests, they say, that China may be willing to militarily assist Russia in their offensive in Ukraine. Russia's operation on the ground clearly not going as well as they may have hoped and anticipated. The US fear that China could intervene by supplying Russia with cutting-edge air defence systems or certainly surveillance systems as well. So I'm told by a senior administration official in a briefing that was the overwhelming focus of this call, to make clear the implications of this crisis for the international order and the overwhelming international condemnation of Russia. I'm also told that President Biden relayed concerns. We were hearing the US ambassador to the UN, Linda Thomas-Greenfield, referred to those earlier, about Russia possibly spreading false information about chemical weapons held in Ukraine, which could give Russia a pretext, a false reason, if you like, to attack. But we're told that talk between President Biden and President Xi was direct and substantive as well. I think the White House recognises that if any world leader is going to hold sway over President Putin, it is President Xi, because of the close economic ties that those countries have and the overwhelming power and strength of China. I think they recognise that he is the person who could possibly have Vladimir Putin's ear. So that phone call lasted around 2 hours. It finished 4 hours ago. We'll hear later on today from President Biden's press secretary, Jen Psaki, who may be able to provide further details on how that call went.
Martha, updating us there from Washington. Thank you. Well, as we've heard, new missile attacks have been carried out here in the west of the country. Let's get some analysis of the latest situation on the ground. Wilfred Frost is at the screen.
For further analysis, I'm joined now by Dr. Alex Walmsley, defence analyst and fellow at RUSI. Alex, good to see you. In terms of the latest, we continue to see the shelling in Mariupol, which we'll come to, and in Kiev. But we wanted to start on that attack in Lviv last night, of course, far to the west of the country, on an airport there, in particular the military repair section of the airport. Alex, therefore, felt like a very targeted attack. Was it? And where did it start from, given it's so far from Russian territory?
Indeed, Wilf, this does seem to have been a targeted attack on a piece of Ukraine's critical national infrastructure. And it seems to have been the product of a cruise missile. Cruise missiles have a very extensive range, so it's quite likely it could have fired from a ship in the Black Sea or from land all the way over the Russian border to the east of Ukraine.
And of course, Poland is just 45 miles to the further to the west of Lviv, where various NATO forces are housed. Let's move from the west into the east, and in particular dive in to the Donbass region. We also learned in the last 24 hours of Russian attempts to establish a no-fly zone in the Donbass region. What would be the significance of that if they did establish it?
This appears to be a propaganda move by the Russians, taking a proactive approach by trying to impose a no-fly zone. But as neither Ukraine nor Russia have complete control of Ukrainian airspace, this does seem to be a sort of political propaganda gesture.
This week, we also learned of $800 million worth of military aid coming from the US. How much of a game changer could that be for Ukrainian forces?
Every piece of military hardware that gets to the Ukrainian forces is a game changer. They have shown in these last 4 weeks that despite being overmatched by the Russian army, they are able to hold their own, in some cases counterattack and even advance.
And just finally, we want to dive in on Mariupol, which sadly seems to be the epicenter of the war in this, the fourth week under heavy shelling. Despite that, still in Ukrainian hands. Could it change hands, sadly, in the weeks ahead? And how significant would that be for Russia?
Mariupol is clearly a strategic aim for the Russians because it's the last city that sits between them and the peninsula of the Crimea, which would give them a land corridor from the Russian mainland to the peninsula. But it is a city of some 400,000 people. It's been subjected to random mass dumb bombing, and the city is being pulverized. It could take many days still to fall, but there won't be much left of it if it does.
Dr. Alex Walmsley, thank you so much.
Well, more than 3 million people have now fled Ukraine since the start of the Russian invasion 3 weeks ago. That is according to the United Nations Refugee Agency, which says almost 2 million have found sanctuary in neighbouring Poland. But the growing refugee crisis has prompted concerns about the safeguarding of the most vulnerable people trying to escape the war. Well, Lisa Holland reports now from the Polish capital, Warsaw.
The refugees left Ukraine in freezing conditions. Some now need different clothes, others have nothing. Yulia says guards on the train made them leave their suitcases behind so more people could be crammed into the carriages. I really need these shoes, she says. I wouldn't have to take charity if it wasn't for the war. There's no shortage of things being donated, but 3 weeks after Russia's invasion, and it's not just clothes, toys and food that the refugees need. There's an accommodation crisis. The Poles are even planning to turn a former complex used by Russian diplomats into emergency housing. Prices are rising, and Terry from Essex is worried about where his family will stay. His workmates had a whip round to help fund his flight so he could be reunited with his Ukrainian wife and son, now waiting for their travel documents.
If I don't get it by Friday, then I'm strapped for cash for hotels. I have got people I can call in the UK and they can try to get some money, emergency money together, but I'm not that type of person.
Sisters Anastasia and Lubov are moving hotels after the price of theirs doubled overnight. As a child, Lubov fled from Crimea when it was invaded by the Russians. Now just turned 18, her sister has come from London to help her get a visa and is worried about her safety.
That's why I'm staying here with her right now, because there is no way I'm leaving my 18-year-old sister in Warsaw for hell knows how long.
3 million refugees have crossed into neighbouring countries, but there are reports of women and children going missing, prompting calls for more to be done to safeguard them.
Who do you now trust? Who's actually offering you the right service? Who's actually offering you the right support? It is such a worry. It's great that people have opened up their homes around the world, but how do we know that those are really in really good intentions?
This is the fastest growing flow of refugees in Europe since World War II. Now the authorities are trying to keep up with the goodwill and support desperately needed by so many driven from their homes. Lisa Holland, Sky News, Warsaw.
Well, stay with us. Coming up on this special programme on the war in Ukraine, shocking images reveal the scale of the devastation in the city of Mariupol in Ukraine's south, which continues to be the target of heavy fire.
Parsons. I'm Sky's Europe correspondent based here in Brussels. Nice to see you again, Mr. Barnier. Why?
Meeting you.
Well, welcome back to Lviv in western Ukraine. New Vision out today shows the scale of damage in Mariupol, a city that has been hit hard by Russian attacks since the start of the war. Well, in the south of the country, it has come under heavy fire. Sky's Nick Martin has the latest.
This isn't a military target. It's what's left of the shopping mall in the city of Mariupol, ripped apart by Russia's insatiable desire to destroy. On the ground, you can see how the windows have been blown out, how the metal has twisted. And it's hard to imagine that just a month ago, this was a busy place full of life. At the last count, more than 130 people have been rescued from a shelter under a theatre bombed by Russian shells. But hundreds are still missing under the rubble. The Russians deny they were responsible.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I hear you.
Petro Andriushenko is an advisor to the mayor of Mariupol.
What is the situation with supplies of aid, first aid, medicines, food, water for those who are trapped in the city?
It's terrible. We haven't anything, you know. We haven't water for our people. We haven't medicine. We haven't food. We haven't anything, and we can help for our people because it's absolutely blocked for Russian troops. 300,000 people in Mariupol now under attack.
The life is being drained from Mariupol as each brutal day passes. This used to be a swimming pool, windows and doors blown out, debris everywhere. The Russian military see this as making gains.
In Mariupol, units of the Donetsk People's Republic, with the support of the Russian armed forces, are closing the encirclement and are fighting against nationalists in the city centre.
Here, a row of shops, apartment blocks, scorched trees, damaged roads, evidence of heavy attacks. It's thought that more than 3,000 people have died in this city. Ivan Goldvenko managed to escape with his life, and he helped around 400 other people do the same.
I love this city. What is happening now is like seeing your relative dying in your hands. You see as their organs stop working one by one, their eyes getting dark, while you hold them in your hands.
Mariupol is a city completely surrounded now. And there's a cold brutality to the Russian tactics here, and that is to destroy everything, razing Mariupol to the ground and crushing the will of its people. Nick Martin, Sky News, Ukraine.
Well, let's take you to the White House Press Secretary Jen Psaki now.
Does recommend fourth doses for the immunocompromised. Well, it hasn't been, of course, as you noted, approved for others, and they're running a vigorous data-driven process. And right now, over 100 million Americans have been boosted. Millions more have not done so and are eligible to do so and need to get boosted. But to go to your question...
Yes, she had been talking about Ukraine and has switched to COVID, as you can see. Well, do stay with us. Coming up on this special programme on the war in Ukraine, we will talk to a couple who are fleeing Ukraine and a family in Yorkshire who would like to host them. Back with all of them in just a moment. Well, welcome back to Lviv. You're watching Sky News. Our top stories then this evening. Russia has attacked the city of Lviv in western Ukraine, which had largely escaped the fighting. One person has died and dozens have been injured in the capital, Kyiv. There are fears that more than 1,000 people are still trapped under the rubble of a theatre which had been sheltering people in the city of Mariupol. And Russia's Vladimir Putin has appeared at a public rally in Moscow celebrating the annexation of Crimea. Well, so far 4,000 visas have been granted to Ukrainian refugees wanting to come to the UK, with thousands of families due to welcome people into their homes. In a moment, I'll be speaking to one of those families, as well as refugees too from Moldova. But first, Ashna Hurinag reports on the people desperately trying to make it to the UK.
Draped in the colours of a country under attack, Wren's home in Cambridge is ready to welcome a Ukrainian refugee. But it wasn't a difficult decision to make. Katrina also happens to be her best friend.
I was 3 years old when there was a Beirut war, and we narrowly escaped death at that war. My dad saw a rocket pass by our window, and if it had taken a slightly different trajectory, I wouldn't be here.
Britons who know the name of a Ukrainian person they wish to host can now fill out an application. But even with passport details and relevant documentation, as Wren found out, it's still not without its challenges.
When do you plan to arrive in the UK? Enter the date in this format. Well, that would be nice if she knew, bless her, when she could arrive.
Details few would know when fleeing war. Like Nyara and her daughter Eleonora, who fled Kharkiv. They've been sleeping rough, but have found a family in Hampshire willing to take them in. She knows plenty, though, who are still stuck in limbo.
Right now, it's very important to match, to find the people in Ukraine who really needs any help. It's strange for me to ask for help, but right now we really need that help.
For prospective hosts without a personal connection, it's a more uncertain wait. Friends introduced Fiona to her match. She hopes to welcome Olga and her children as soon as she can.
I feel now very pleased that I have, by various routes, found a connection, and we seem to have linked up with someone a family who we could provide accommodation to. So it's been a tricky, it hasn't been easy to find that route.
So far, 4,000 visas have been granted to Ukrainians with a relative in the UK. That's in addition to those opening their homes out of goodwill. Some say the process is too bureaucratic. Is the UK doing enough?
I think the UK can do so much more. One of the things that would really enable that would be to lower the barriers to be able to find safety in the UK by getting rid of the visa restrictions and enabling people to be able to come directly to the UK rather than having to apply before coming. That would enable people to be able to come here far faster.
Those fleeing have had their homes ripped from them, and rebuilding their lives will rely on support. Hundreds of thousands want to help, and their first challenge is to get them here. Ashna Hurinag, Sky News.
Well, let's find out more then about the practicalities of sponsoring people from Ukraine. We can talk to two couples on both sides of the process. So I'm joined now by Sabrina Edge and her daughter Kitty, who are in Driffield in Yorkshire, and by Lilia and Vitaly Malona, who have fled Ukraine, are now in Moldova and are hoping to join the Edge family. Well, welcome to all of you. Sabrina, let's kick off with your side of it then, shall we? Why did you feel compelled to try and help?
Well, it's not the first time we've been on a scheme like this. We were with Positive Housing and Action in 2016. So it's always, as a family, been an idea for us. We've got a spare room. And we just were watching the news with the breakout of the war, and we just felt compelled that we had to, offer 2 rooms that we have. And this was nearly 3 weeks ago. So, it was before the government had even announced any scheme, any incentive, nothing like that. It was just purely on we need to help. We've got the availability. Let's do something.
Wow, so you got there before the government. Fascinating. Well, let's go to Lilia in Moldova. And you've obviously managed to get out of Ukraine. So tell us your story then. Where were you and why did you decide to flee?
Yeah. One morning we woke up
with such bad news. Yes, and I can say that why it was unexpected, because it was a very early morning. Yes, we were preparing to take our kids to school, and we are preparing to get to our workplace. And my aunt called me in the morning and said, wake up quickly, because it's going to be dangerous today to stay at home, because I could see some rockets in the sky over my house. And she lives 120 kilometers away from us. And it was like an evidence. It's a very close person called me, and she said me, if I saw something maybe online, I wouldn't believe. And I was starting crying, because I didn't know what exactly to do. And then we heard these alarm sirenes, and to tell the truth, the basements were not ready for accepting people. They were wet and dirty, so we couldn't stay there for long. There wasn't any water and so on. And we were really scared. I didn't know what to do. My children were crying. I was crying too. My husband tried to support, but we decided we live just not far away from Moldova. So we decided to leave this place, to go to abroad, because we decided it would be better for our family to stay there.
So why the UK? Perhaps you could ask your husband Vitaly how he feels about going to the United Kingdom.
Як ти почуваєш себе стосовно від'їзду до Великобританії?
Я почуваю себе добре, набагато. Це мене дуже радує.
He is very glad that we have such opportunity to change something, yes, in our life, because we can't see any future here, especially for our two daughters. They are still young. Yes, they're not ready for such like with war. That we want to protect them first of all. And of course, he's a little bit worried because he can't speak English very well. But as I speak English very well, so it was my decision to go to the English-speaking country first. And we were thinking which one to choose. And we found this family. And to tell the truth, their support made us to go to UK.
Well, that's lovely, isn't it? And Sabrina, then, so how did that sort of connection part of it happen? Because that's been confusing a lot of people, how you get matched up with another family.
Well, we were lucky. My eldest daughter, sent a Facebook group that she'd seen. And I think 2 weeks ago, there was a couple of hundred people on it. And I think now it's like 50,000 people on it. There was a IT guys that developed a website in 24 hours from Madrid, and I found them and put in my details. Lilia did that 2 weeks ago today, and she sent me a message on the 4th of March, an email saying, could we have a chat? We spoke, and that's what we've been doing ever since. A lot of FaceTimes, a lot of tour around the house. And all of us have just got this real nice friendship that's, sort of naturally bloomed. We've all got similar interests. The girls have got a WhatsApp group with their eldest daughter, Victoria. So we're just desperate. We did the application today. It took 3 hours, and we're still no further forward on a date. So we can't plan, they can't plan. It's just, stressful.
So, Lilia, what are you holding up? And tell us about your children and how they feel. How old are they and how do they feel about coming? What is quite a distance from Ukraine, to be fair?
Yeah, these are our 4 passports. Yeah, because I worked with them. That we exchanged the information. Sabrina sent me her copies of the passport. I sent her our information. So we had a hectic day, but luckily we completed the application online. And we have 2 more daughters. Victoria is 14 and Ilona is only 6. Unfortunately, they went to sleep because they were tired today. Yes, they're also worried about moving to other country, because sometimes they say, oh, we want to come back home, but unfortunately I don't know how to say that we can't back. All the things are there, and they sometimes want to take some toys, and they say, unfortunately we can't take all of them. So that Yeah, we are very lucky, I can say so. And I hope a lot of families will be as lucky as we are. Yes, they will be able to apply. Unfortunately, not all Ukrainians speak English, yes, and the website is not in Russian or in Ukrainian. And this is a problem, yes, because only I could apply myself, but usual people, for them, it's really difficult to apply because everything is in English.
I did see one thing, actually, that the Home Secretary put out in Ukrainian, so hopefully that will be changing. But Kitty, I wonder if I could speak to you. I don't know how old you are, how close you are in age to Victoria as well, and how you feel about having, you know, effectively more children in the house.
Well, I'm 11 and I don't feel like uncomfortable with them coming. Like, I've spoke to them on like a WhatsApp group and like we've got to know each other. So like I don't really know what to say.
Well, we've done lots of FaceTime, haven't we?
Yeah.
You're comfortable,
Yeah.
Well, I'm sure it's going to be amazing. It's going to be interesting, certainly, for you and all the other families who want to join. One final thought from you, Lilia and Vitaly. Obviously, you know, you're desperate to move as soon as you can. But will you always look back at Ukraine and watch the pictures of what's happening in your country with sadness and, of course, the hope to return there?
Yeah, of course we are going to follow, yes, and of course we have such feelings that we don't need to leave our country, yes, and there is like a pain in my heart that I have to do it, unfortunately, yes, because of all these bad circumstances, yes, and sometimes I think, oh, should I really do it, or maybe I should do something, but I understand that we have to do it because it's really becomes really dangerous. For example, there was a rocket along the river which we live near. Yeah, I can see the river through the window. There was a rocket flying to Vinnytsia, yes, and it was destroyed in the air. It turned just next to our town, to Vinnytsia, and you know, it's becoming more and more dangerous to stay here.
Best to keep your children safe, isn't it? We really appreciate you all joining us. We wish you the very best of luck. Lilia and Vitaly Malona, and I'm sure there'll be English lessons for all the people who can't speak English, and also Sabrina and Kitty Edge. Well done to both of you, and fingers crossed you get to move soon. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.
I do the same, but I've got a notebook in my hand. How lovely. Anyway, coming up on this special programme on the war in Ukraine, we will talk about the situation facing civilians here with a US Under-Secretary for Democracy and Human Rights from the US State Department.
Confirming that they are now engaged with Russian soldiers. Air raid sirens fill the airways.
In the distance, artillery rains down.
It feels very close to the centre of... There's one.
They found this devastation to their apartment.
Lots of people live here. Quite a few of the windows of the houses have been blown out by the blast.
And it feels that it's changing each day.
Well, earlier I was at an arts centre turned makeshift aid centre here in Lviv to see what the humanitarian situation was on the ground here. Well, we know that many parts of Ukraine are desperately in need of provisions like food. This is where they will be distributed. As you can see, this is oats. Many of the signs are actually in English. Our understanding is this lot came from Germany. And in fact, national governments may well donate stuff that ends up here. Bags of flour as well. These sacks will be sorted out here, and different parts of Ukraine will put requests in, and the provisions will be distributed down. They have about 250 vehicles leaving per day to go to other parts of Ukraine. Camouflage netting, as you can see, this will be going to troops as well. And drinks, provisions, food. And in fact, here we found Michael, who's actually from Southend-on-Sea, are you not? You should be managing a hotel right now. Why have you decided to come here?
I just couldn't sit at home and just watch what's going on around the world over here. I had to help out.
So how long have you actually been here for then?
I've been here for about 5 days now.
And how long will you stay?
Not sure. It's not really sure yet.
Was it complicated for you to come and get in here and be able to do this?
Not really, actually, because I flew into Poland, into Rzeszów. Sorry, Polish people, sorry. And then took a train all the way to Lviv. And then I came in here. I went to the army base first. They drove me here, and I signed up, got a band, and I started unloading trucks, loading trucks up, loading all this stuff up, and just helping out as much as I can.
So what was it about the images that you saw from Ukraine that drove you to want to come here, in fact?
The innocent people, the children, just being stranded, losing everything, having to lose everything and start all over again is a painful thing to watch. Just houses getting destroyed, buildings, hospitals. It's just not right.
Yes, and Michael J. Paul there, just like Sabrina Edge that we spoke to in Yorkshire, driven to do something to help the people here, having watched the pictures and read about the devastation here in Ukraine. And certainly that centre deals with about 1,000 refugees a day, sometimes up to 1,500, who come with almost nothing, just the shoes on their feet. And they get restocked with food, first of all, as well, but also clothing, warm gear for the kids, like socks and hats, also bedding. You know, they pack up all the duvets. So if you've donated a material or you've paid into a charity possibly as well, it may well be that the stuff you've donated ends up there. People drive stuff to the Polish border. It's then brought across the border and ends up to be distributed to the refugees here, but also out into the wider communities, to those who are displaced across Ukraine. Now, the UK Prime Minister has said he thinks Vladimir Putin sees himself as the successor to Stalin and the Russian Tsars. In an interview for FYI, Sky's news programme for young people, Boris Johnson was also asked if he would consider taking Ukrainian refugees into Downing Street. The Prime Minister was answering questions put forward by readers of the children's newspaper First News.
A lot of people think that President Putin is a very bad person. What did you think of him when you met him?
I think that he is a guy who grew up in the Cold War. He's a Secret Service man. He's a KGB man. He's a Russian spy. That's how he thinks. He thinks in a very adversarial way towards the West. He believes that the West, countries like ours, are trying to encircle Russia and threaten Russia. And he's obsessed with that idea. And he's wrong. I think he sees himself as being the successor, in a way, not just of Stalin, but of the Tsars. And he sees himself as somebody in the tradition of an all-powerful Russian autocrat. That's how he sees himself.
Do you feel bad that the UK hasn't taken in more refugees when, you know, some places like Poland and neighbouring countries have taken in close to 2 million?
They have, but of course the UK doesn't have a border, so we haven't received the first wave, but we are taking many, many more now as people decide to come on to the UK, and that's right. You know, we've got an amazing record as a country for taking people in.
Well, following on for that, will you be housing any refugees here?
Well, I am not the I'm a mere tenant. this. I'm not even a tenant. I don't know what my status is exactly. I'm the temporary occupant of this place. It is up to others to decide how that would work. If we could do it, then I'm sure people would welcome it. I'm sure there are a lot of people here who would want to do it.
And you can see the full interview with Boris Johnson on FYI this weekend on Sky News and also on Sky Kids. Well, the UK Chief of Defence Intelligence, Lieutenant General Jim Hockenhall, has given his latest briefing, and it is grim reading, I have to say, for places like Mariupol. The latest pictures, as you can see, utterly devastating. Lieutenant General Hockenhall said that Russian operations have changed. Russia is now pursuing a strategy of attrition. This will involve the reckless and indiscriminate use of firepower. This will result in increased civilian casualties and the destruction of Ukrainian infrastructure. And that is certainly what we have seen. The latest also from the United Nations makes grim reading too. They say that 3.25 million people have now fled Ukraine, but a big jump up in those numbers who are internally displaced. 6.5 million people now internally displaced. That means upwards of 10 million people have had their lives upended so far by this conflict.